Sweetie, this is too big for you, Margot said, her voice dripping with faux concern as she pushed my project folder aside. The board needs someone with more pedigree for this level of investment. Fortunately, my daughter just graduated with her MBA. Perfect timing. I stared at her, the blood rushing to my ears, making everything sound distant and muffled. 9 months of work, gone, just like that. But I built this from nothing, I whispered, my voice barely audible in the gleaming conference room. Those 7 investors are meeting with us next week because of my pitch. Kaida, she sighed, like I was a child who couldn't grasp simple math. Investors care about credentials. My Olivia brings the right background. Harvard Business School opens doors you can't even see. She smiled, revealing perfect teeth that had never known struggle. Look on the bright side. You can support her team with the administrative details. You're good at that. The $5 million project I had created from scratch, the one that had kept me working until 3 a.m. for months, was being handed to someone who'd never even worked a day at our company until yesterday. You're right, I said quietly, gathering my things. This is too big for me. Margot looked surprised at my easy surrender, then pleased. She hadn't expected compliance. As I walked toward the door, she called after me. We'll need those investor contacts by end of day. Email them to Olivia directly. I didn't look back. I didn't slam the door. I just left. Before I continue with what happened next, thank you for listening to my story today. Drop a comment letting me know where you're tuning in from. I always love knowing who's out there. My name is Kaida Lin. I'm 32, and until 9 months ago, I was the executive assistant to Margot Powell, chief strategy officer at a growing financial technology company. What Margot never bothered to learn was that before becoming her assistant 4 years ago, I'd spent 6 years building automation systems for investment banks in Singapore. I wasn't just her calendar manager. I was a talented developer who couldn't afford to finish my computer science degree when my father got sick. But Margot only saw the current title on my business card, executive assistant. To her, I existed to order her lunch and manage her schedule, not to have ideas of my own. The irony? I never would have created the project if not for her negligence. It started when Margot missed an important deadline for a market analysis report. The board was expecting recommendations for expanding our services to small businesses, a potential new revenue stream. But Margot was too busy planning her daughter's graduation party to complete it. Can you just put together some notes? She'd asked casually 3 hours before the board meeting. Nothing fancy, just so I have something to present. I stayed late, pulling data, creating visualizations, and writing a comprehensive analysis. I wasn't doing it for her. I was doing it because I cared about the company. When I handed her the report, she barely glanced at it before walking into the boardroom. An hour later, she emerged beaming. They loved it, she said, surprised. They want us to develop a full proposal. That's when I saw my opportunity. I've actually been thinking about this market segment for a while. I have some ideas about how we could approach it differently than our competitors. She laughed. That's sweet, Kaida, but this needs strategic thinking. Just keep handling the administrative side. For 2 weeks, I watched as Margot struggled to develop the concept further. Board members kept stopping by, asking for updates on that brilliant small business proposal. Each time, she offered vague answers about exploring various avenues. Finally, late one Friday, when everyone had left, I placed a detailed implementation plan on her desk with financial projections, technical specifications, and a market entry strategy. Then I waited. Monday morning, Margot burst into my cubicle. "Where did you get this?" she demanded, waving my proposal. "I wrote it," I said simply. "You?" She stared at me like I'd claimed to have invented electricity. "Why would you do that?" "Because I care about this company," I said. "And because I can." She studied me for a long moment. "The board meeting is Thursday. I can't develop something else by then." I knew what that meant. She was going to use my work, but I also knew she'd never admit it was mine. "Fine," she finally said. "You can develop this on the side. But your regular duties come first." That was the beginning. For months, I worked double shifts, handling Margot's everyday needs during office hours, then building my project nights and weekends. I assembled a small team of believers, Devin from engineering, Faye from marketing, and Zeke from analytics. They saw the potential when nobody else did. We called it Bridge. a platform connecting small businesses with microloans and financial services typically only available to larger corporations. What made it unique was the algorithm I designed that assessed risk based on patterns human analysts often missed. Internal testing showed a 43% higher accuracy rate in predicting successful loan repayments. The board was impressed enough to allocate preliminary resources. That's when everything changed. Suddenly, Margot was attending all our meetings, inserting herself into investor conversations, making sure she was photographed standing next to me during presentations. Kaida and I have been developing this concept together, she'd tell potential investors, her arm around my shoulders. I never contradicted her. The project was more important than my ego. By month 7, we had 7 serious investors interested. Not just interested, excited. Term sheets were being drafted, implementation plans finalized. Bridge was going to revolutionize small business lending, and it was going to generate significant revenue. Then Margot's daughter, Olivia, graduated from Harvard. Looking back, I should have seen what was coming. The way Margot started excluding me from certain meetings. How she began referring to Bridge as this project I've been spearheading in company-wide emails. But I was too focused on the finish line. Securing the final investment, launching the platform, helping small businesses that reminded me of my father's struggling restaurant. The morning Margot took Bridge away from me, I'd just finished confirming our presentation schedule with all 7 investors for the following week. They were flying in specifically to meet with me. 3 from Boston, 2 from Austin, 1 from Toronto, and 1 from San Francisco. Each had worked directly with me for months. They knew my voice, my vision, my understanding of the technical architecture. They'd asked me hundreds of questions, and I'd answered each one with precision and honesty. And now Olivia, who knew nothing about Bridge beyond what was in that folder, would be meeting them instead. As I walked out of the building, my phone buzzed with a text from Devin. How'd the meeting go? I didn't answer. I couldn't find the words. Instead, I went to the small park across from our office and sat on a bench, watching people rush by. Everyone had somewhere to be, something important to do. Yesterday, that was me. Today, I was just a woman on a bench with a hollow feeling in her chest. My phone kept buzzing. Messages from Faye and Zeke now too. They knew something was wrong. We'd been scheduled to meet after my conversation with Margot to finalize our investor presentation. Finally, I texted our group chat, meeting room B, 15 minutes. When I walked in, their faces showed immediate concern. What happened? Devin asked, pushing his glasses up nervously. I took a deep breath. Margot is taking over Bridge. She's putting her daughter Olivia in charge. Silence fell over the room. Then Faye spoke, her voice tight with anger. She can't do that. This is your project. Apparently she can, I replied. She's already done it. Zeke shook his head. The investors won't accept this. They've been working with you directly for months. Margot thinks Olivia's Harvard MBA will impress them more than my work, I said, the words bitter on my tongue. Devin slammed his hand on the table. This is wrong. We need to fight this. I looked at each of them, my team, my friends, and made a decision that would change everything. No, I said firmly. We're not going to fight. They stared at me in confusion. We're going to do something much more effective. I leaned forward, lowering my voice even though we were alone. We're going to let Olivia take over, completely. Faye shook her head in disbelief. Let her take over? After everything we've built? Not just let her, I clarified. We're going to step all the way back. Devin crossed his arms. I'm not following. Think about it, I continued. Bridge isn't just a proposal anymore. It's a complex system with technical architecture that only we truly understand. The investors have specific questions about implementation, risk assessment algorithms, market penetration strategy. Zeke's eyes widened as he caught on, and Olivia knows none of it. Exactly. I pulled out my notebook and opened to a fresh page. The investors are coming next week expecting detailed answers. They've been working with us for months. They know what questions to ask. So we just… What? Let Olivia crash and burn? Faye asked, her voice uncertain. We do our jobs, I said firmly. Nothing more, nothing less. No sabotage, no undermining, just professional boundaries. I wrote 4 names on the paper. Devin, you've been the lead engineer explaining the technical architecture to investors. From now on, You only discuss technical details when directly asked by Olivia or Margot. Devin nodded slowly. Faye, you've built relationships with all the market research contacts. Same rule applies. Only share information when directly asked specific questions. What about me? Zeke asked quietly. You've created all our financial models. The investors trust those projections because you've walked them through your methodology. Now, Olivia will need to do that. The room fell silent as they absorbed what I was suggesting. We're not sabotaging anything, I continued. We're just stopping the invisible work we've been doing. The explaining, interpreting, smoothing over confusion, anticipating questions. All the things no one notices until they're gone. Devin leaned forward. What about the investors? Do we ignore their calls? No, I said. We forward them to Olivia. She's the project lead now, remember? And if Margot orders us to help? Faye asked. We help, exactly as instructed. No more and no less. I closed my notebook. We can't control what Margot does, but we can control how much of ourselves we give to a project that's been taken from us. As we left the meeting room, I felt a strange mixture of sadness and clarity. For 9 months, I'd poured myself into Bridge. Now I was preparing to watch it struggle without me. Back at my desk, I opened my laptop and composed a brief, factual email to each investor. I wanted to inform you that leadership of the Bridge project has changed. Olivia Powell will be taking over as project lead, effective immediately. She'll be your main contact going forward and will present at next week's meetings. Thank you for your continued interest in Bridge. No emotion, no details explaining why, just the facts. Within an hour, my inbox filled with replies, confusion, concern, questions about what this meant for their investments. I forwarded each one to Olivia without comment. At 3:42 p.m., Margot appeared at my desk, her face tight with controlled anger. What did you say to the investors? She demanded. I informed them about the change in project leadership, I replied calmly. As you instructed, they're calling me with concerns. I'm sure Olivia can address those in her meetings next week. Margot's eyes narrowed. I expect you to brief Olivia thoroughly on everything. Every detail, every investor preference, every technical specification. You'll sit with her all weekend if necessary. I nodded. Of course. I've already sent her the presentation files. That's not enough, and you know it, Margot snapped. She needs to understand what's in your head, too. All the relationship details you've built with these investors. I looked up at her. I'll answer any specific questions Olivia has. Margot stared at me for a long moment. Be in the large conference room tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. Olivia will have questions. After she left, I sat very still, breathing deeply. This was the test. Could I truly let go? Could I watch something I created struggle without rushing in to save it? That evening, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about all the late nights, the weekends spent refining algorithms, the calls with potential customers to understand their needs. Bridge wasn't just a project, it was a piece of me. At 8 a.m. sharp, I entered the conference room, where Olivia sat, surrounded by printouts of my presentations. Like her mother, she had perfect posture and expensive clothes. Unlike her mother, she looked terrified. Good morning, I said politely. Mom said you'd answer my questions. She began without preamble. I will. She pushed a stack of investor profiles toward me. Tell me about them, their personalities, what they care about, how they like to be approached. I sat down. What specific questions do you have about each investor? Olivia frowned. I don't know what I don't know. Just tell me everything important. That's quite broad, I replied. Perhaps you could review their meeting notes and emails, then ask me about anything that's unclear? Her frustration grew visible. I have 5 days to prepare for 7 major investor meetings. I don't have time to dig through months of correspondence. I understand it's a challenging timeline, I said neutrally. What would help you most right now? She gestured vaguely at the papers. Tell me about the project, in your own words. For a moment, I was tempted. I could paint the vision that had kept me working until dawn so many nights. I could explain how Bridge would transform access to capital for small businesses like my father's. I could make her understand why this mattered. Instead, I opened the project overview document. Bridge connects small businesses with microloans using proprietary risk assessment algorithms. The market potential is approximately $5 million in the first year of operation. She stared at me. That's it? That's your pitch? That's the executive summary, I replied. The full details are in these documents. For 3 hours, we continued this dance. Olivia asking broad questions, me responding with precise but minimal answers. I wasn't being difficult. I was simply refusing to do the interpretive work, the translation of complex ideas into digestible narratives that had been my hidden value all along. By 11 a.m., Margot joined us, clearly unhappy with our progress. This isn't working, Olivia told her mother. She's not really helping. Margot turned to me. What's the problem, Kaida? No problem, I said. I'm answering Olivia's questions as asked. Then answer better, Margot snapped. The investors are expecting detailed presentations on Tuesday, and Olivia needs to understand everything by then. I nodded. I've provided all the presentation materials. Is there something specific missing? Margot's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and frowned. Richard from Altura Capital is asking for you directly. He wants to touch base before Tuesday's presentation. Richard was our largest potential investor. He'd been enthusiastic about Bridge from our first conversation 6 months ago. Should I call him back? I asked. No, Margot said quickly. Olivia will call him. You'll sit in and help only if needed. As Olivia nervously dialed Richard's number, I felt a twist of something like grief. These investor relationships were built on trust I'd earned through hundreds of honest conversations. Now I was watching that trust transfer to someone else, or more likely, evaporate entirely. Richard, hi, this is Olivia Powell. I'm the new project lead for Bridge. I watched Richard's name on the phone display as Olivia launched into an explanation about her background and qualifications. After a minute, Richard interrupted her. That's great, but I was hoping to speak with Kaida. Is she available? Olivia glanced at her mother, who nodded reluctantly. She's here with me. Let me put you on speaker. Kaida? Richard's voice filled the room. What's going on? I'm getting emails about leadership changes right before our final meeting. I felt Margot's eyes drilling into me. Yes, there's been a change in project leadership. Olivia will be taking Bridge forward from here. I see. His tone cooled noticeably. And you? Are you still involved? Before I could answer, Margot cut in. Kaida will be supporting Olivia's team in an administrative capacity. But Olivia brings valuable expertise from her Harvard MBA program that will enhance the project significantly. The silence that followed felt endless. I understand, Richard finally said. Well, I look forward to Tuesday's presentation. I'll have some additional questions about the risk assessment algorithms and implementation timeline. After the call ended, Margot turned to me. This is exactly why we need you to properly brief Olivia. The investors are nervous. I'll help however I can, I said, my voice even. What questions do you have about the algorithms, Olivia? Olivia looked panicked. I don't even know what questions to ask. Can't you just explain how they work? I pulled up the technical documentation. The algorithms use natural language processing to evaluate loan applications, combined with traditional credit metrics and alternative data sources. But what does that actually mean? She pressed. It means the system can read application text and find patterns human analysts might miss, I explained. It's all detailed in Devin's technical overview. Devin from engineering? Olivia asked. Maybe I should talk to him directly. Good idea, I agreed. As the day continued, Olivia grew increasingly overwhelmed. The more she learned about Bridge, the more she realized how much she didn't know. By 4 p.m., she had spoken to Devin, Faye, and Zeke, each providing technically correct but minimal information without the connective tissue that would make it meaningful. That evening, I received an urgent text from Margot. My office, 8 a.m. tomorrow. When I arrived the next morning, Margot was already there, looking like she hadn't slept. This isn't working, she said bluntly. The investors are concerned about the transition. 2 have already requested postponing Tuesday's meetings. I waited silently. I need you to fix this, she continued. Prepare Olivia properly or join her in the investor presentations. I thought I wasn't qualified to lead this project, I said quietly. Margot's expression hardened. Don't play games, Kaida. You know what's at stake here. Yes, I do. I maintained eye contact. Bridge could transform financial access for small businesses. It could help people like my father, who lost his restaurant because he couldn't get a small business loan during the downturn. Margot looked startled. I'd never mentioned my personal connection to the project before. I didn't realize. No, you didn't, I said. Because you never asked why I created Bridge in the first place. We stared at each other across her desk, the power dynamic shifting subtly between us. What will it take? She finally asked. To get you fully on board with this transition? I considered my next words carefully. This wasn't about revenge. It was about recognition and respect. I'll help Olivia succeed, I said slowly. But I need something in return. Margot leaned forward. Name it. Project Attribution, I said. My name stays on Bridge as founder and lead architect. In writing, Margot's mouth tightened. Olivia needs to establish credibility. She can be the project director, but my work, my creation, needs to be acknowledged. I leaned forward slightly. This isn't negotiable. Fine, she conceded after a moment. Your name stays. What else? I join the investor meetings, but only to introduce Olivia and answer technical questions she can't. That sounds reasonable. Margot relaxed slightly. And you'll properly prepare her beforehand? I'll do my best, I said carefully. But Bridge is complex. There's only so much someone can absorb in 4 days. Harvard education or not. Margot nodded, seemingly satisfied with my apparent surrender. Start immediately. The investors arrived Tuesday morning. Over the next 4 days, I worked with Olivia, explaining Bridge's architecture, the investor personalities, the market strategy. To her credit, she was intelligent and hardworking, often staying past midnight trying to absorb everything. But it was like teaching someone to perform surgery after reading a medical textbook, theoretical knowledge without practical experience. The investors might ask about implementation timelines. I warned her Monday evening, specifically, how quickly we can integrate with existing banking systems. Olivia sighed, rubbing her temples. And what's the answer? It depends on whether they want the standard API package or the custom integration. Which is better? She asked. Neither. They serve different needs. Richard from Altura prefers the custom approach because his portfolio companies need specialized features. Elena from Pioneer wants standardization for easier scaling. How am I supposed to remember all these individual preferences? Olivia groaned. You're not, I said simply. That's why relationships matter. These details come from months of conversations. She looked at me, a new understanding in her expression. This is what you've been building all along, isn't it? Not just the platform, but the relationships. I nodded. Bridge isn't just code, it's trust. For the first time, I saw genuine regret cross her face. I didn't ask for this project. You know, Mom insisted I take it. Why did you agree? I asked, genuinely curious. Olivia stared at her hands. Because saying no to my mother isn't something I've learned how to do yet. The response surprised me. I'd been so focused on my own feelings of betrayal that I hadn't considered Olivia might be trapped in her own way. Help me get through tomorrow, she said quietly. After that, well, we'll see. Tuesday morning arrived with a knot of tension in my stomach. The 7 investors would be meeting with us individually throughout the day, starting with Richard from Altura Capital. Ready? I asked Olivia, as we waited in the conference room. Not remotely, she admitted, but I'm going to try my best. When Richard entered, his expression brightened upon seeing me. Kaida, good to see you're still involved. Good morning, Richard, I replied professionally. As mentioned, Olivia Powell will be leading Bridge going forward. I'm here to facilitate the transition and answer any technical questions. Richard's smile dimmed slightly as he turned to Olivia. Miss Powell, your mother speaks highly of your capabilities. Thank you for coming, Olivia said, her voice steadier than I expected. I'm excited to discuss how Bridge aligns with Altura's investment strategy. The meeting began well enough, with Olivia following our prepared outline. But when Richard began asking detailed questions about the risk assessment algorithms, she struggled. The, algorithms use natural language processing, she began, repeating what I'd told her. Yes, but how exactly does it weigh unconventional data against traditional credit metrics? Richard pressed. That was the breakthrough Kaida explained last month. Olivia glanced at me, panic flashing across her face. I stepped in smoothly. The weighting is dynamic, Richard. It adjusts based on industry-specific factors, which addresses your concern about seasonal businesses. Exactly what I wanted to hear. Richard nodded. And the implementation timeline? We've prepared 2 options, I said before Olivia could respond. The standard API integration you mentioned was too limiting for your portfolio companies, so we've developed a custom approach that preserves flexibility while maintaining security protocols. Richard smiled. This is why I've been excited about Bridge from the beginning. You understand exactly what we need. The rest of the meeting continued similarly. Olivia presenting the basic outline, me jumping in to provide the detailed answers that maintained investor confidence. By the end, Richard seemed satisfied, though he directed most of his questions to me despite Margot's obvious frustration from the corner where she observed. As Richard left, he shook my hand firmly. Let's talk soon, Kaida. I have some thoughts about the rollout strategy. Before Olivia could thank him for coming, he was gone. That went well, Margot said, joining us at the table. I stayed silent, letting her interpret Richard's behavior however she wanted. The next investor, Elena from Pioneer Ventures, arrived 30 minutes later. Her meeting followed a similar pattern, with Olivia handling the presentation and me fielding the technical questions. By the end of the day, after all 7 investors had come and gone, a pattern had emerged. Each one directed their substantive questions to me, barely acknowledging Olivia beyond basic courtesy. Despite my attempts to include her in the conversations, the investors had made their preferences clear. As the last investor left, Margot pulled me aside, her voice tight. This isn't what we agreed to. You're undermining Olivia. I'm answering questions when asked. I replied calmly. That was our agreement. You're making her look incompetent. I'm not doing anything except being honest with people who are considering investing millions in our company. Margot stepped closer, lowering her voice. Fix this. By tomorrow, I want those investors seeing Olivia as the face of Bridge. Find a way to make that happen, or your attribution agreement is void. After she stormed off, Olivia approached me cautiously. That wasn't your fault. I'm the one who couldn't answer their questions. You did well with what you had, I assured her. Nobody could master this material in 4 days. She bit her lip. What happens tomorrow? 3 more investor meetings, potentially the final decision on funding. And after that? She asked. After that, Bridge either moves forward with funding or it doesn't. That night, I couldn't sleep. Everything I'd built was hanging in the balance. Bridge wasn't just a project. It was my vision for helping small businesses like my father's. The thought of it falling apart because of corporate politics made my chest ache. At 2 a.m., my phone lit up with a text from Devin. You awake? Yes, I replied. Meeting room B, 30 minutes. Emergency team meeting. When I arrived, Devin, Faye, and Zeke were already there, faces grim. What's happening? I asked. Margot emailed us all individually, Faye explained. She wants us to prepare Olivia to handle all technical questions tomorrow. No backup from you allowed. Devin pushed his glasses up. She's setting her daughter up to fail. Or setting you up, Zeke added. Either way, Bridge is in trouble. I sank into a chair. The investors won't commit if they don't get clear answers tomorrow. What do we do? Faye asked. If we try to cram more information into Olivia's head overnight, she'll just freeze up worse. And if we don't, Devin added, the project dies. We sat in silence, the weight of 9 months' work pressing down on us. Finally, I looked up at my team, the people who had believed in Bridge from the beginning. I think it's time for Plan B, I said quietly. We have a Plan B? Zeke asked. We do now. I pulled out my phone and began typing an email. I need you all to trust me one more time. At 8 a.m. the next morning, I arrived at the office to find Margot waiting at my desk. Where were you last night? She demanded. Olivia said you were supposed to continue her preparation. I had something important to take care of, I replied, setting down my bag. More important than Bridge? She asked incredulously. Actually, yes. I met her gaze steadily. The first investor arrives in an hour. Olivia should review the presentation one more time. Margot stared at me suspiciously but left without further questions. At 9 a.m. sharp, Marco from Thompson Capital arrived for our meeting. As we settled into the conference room, I noticed Olivia looked surprisingly calm compared to yesterday. Before we begin, Marco said, I received an interesting email last night. I'd like to discuss that first. Margot shifted in her seat. What email? Marco pulled out his tablet. It was from Kaida, actually. Subject line, Bridge. The complete truth. The room went silent. Margot turned to me, her expression murderous. What did you do? She whispered. Before I could answer, the conference room door opened, and Richard from Altura Capital walked in, followed by Elena and the other investors from yesterday. Sorry we're late, Richard said, though he didn't look sorry at all. Kaida invited all of us to join this morning's session. Hope that's okay. Margot stood up, her professional mask firmly in place despite the unexpected development. Of course, we're happy to accommodate all of you together, though this is unusual. Richard took a seat. So, is receiving an email at midnight detailing exactly why a project's leadership changed days before funding decisions. I can explain, Margot began. No need, Elena interrupted smoothly. Kaida's email was quite thorough. 9 months of development, original concept, technical architecture, investor relationships, all her work. With help from her excellent team, Marco added, nodding to Devin, Faye, and Zeke, who had quietly entered and were standing at the back of the room. Margot's face flushed. This is highly inappropriate. Kaida has clearly violated company confidentiality. By sharing facts? Richard asked. Nothing in her email disparaged the company or anyone in it. She simply outlined her contributions to Bridge and explained the recent transition and proposed an alternative structure, Elena added with a slight smile. Margot went very still. Alternative? Structure? All eyes turned to me. I took a deep breath. The moment I had been building toward had arrived. Yes, I said calmly. An alternative structure. I stood and moved to the head of the conference table where Olivia was seated. She gave me a slight nod and moved aside, not retreating completely, but making space. Last night, I began. I sent an email to all 7 investors detailing my history with Bridge, from concept creation through development to yesterday's meetings. I didn't disparage Margot or Olivia. I simply provided context about the project's origin and recent transition. Margot's knuckles whitened around her pen. That information was internal and confidential. Actually, Marco interjected, nothing in Kaida's email contained proprietary technical details. She outlined her contributions without revealing protected intellectual property. The email concluded with a proposal, Elena added, turning to Margot. One I found quite compelling. I opened my laptop, connecting it to the room's display. Bridge was always meant to change how small businesses access capital. That mission hasn't changed. On screen, I pulled up a new company structure, different from anything we'd presented before. What is this? Margot demanded. The future of Bridge, I replied calmly. A separate entity, independently funded, with its own leadership structure. Richard leaned forward. We've discussed this concept with our respective investment committees this morning. All 7 of us are interested in funding Bridge as a standalone company, rather than a division of your current organization. That's impossible, Margot stammered. The intellectual property belongs to the company. Actually, Devin spoke up from the back of the room. The core algorithm was developed using open-source frameworks, and the business model is novel but not patentable. The only proprietary elements are the integration interfaces, which we've redesigned from scratch over the past 8 hours. Faye stepped forward. The market research and customer relationships were built through Kaida's personal network, not company resources. And the financial models, Zeke added, were created using publicly available data, not internal company information. Margot turned to me, her voice dangerously quiet. You planned this all along. No, I answered honestly. This was Plan B. Created last night after you made it clear you'd rather sink Bridge than let me remain involved on my own terms. The room fell silent as Margot absorbed the implications. Her gaze shifted to Olivia, who hadn't spoken a word since the meeting began. Olivia, tell them this is absurd, Margot demanded. To everyone's surprise, Olivia straightened her shoulders and looked directly at her mother. Actually, I knew about this. I helped them prepare it last night. Margot's face went from flushed to pale in an instant. You what? I realized something yesterday, Olivia continued, her voice gaining strength. I was placed in a position where failure was inevitable, not because I lacked capability, but because I was being used as a tool to take credit for someone else's work. She glanced at me. That's not the career I want. The new structure includes a role for Olivia, I explained, advancing to the next slide. As Director of Client Relations, a position aligned with her actual skills and interests, not one chosen to serve someone else's agenda. Elena smiled. We were particularly impressed by that detail. It shows maturity and a true understanding of effective leadership, placing people in positions where they can excel rather than where they serve political purposes. Margot stood abruptly. This meeting is over. You're all fired. Kaida, Devin, Faye, Zeke. Security will escort you from the building. That would be unwise, Richard said mildly, considering all 7 of us are prepared to withdraw our investment interest entirely if that happens. You can't seriously be supporting this coup, Margot sputtered. We're supporting the team that created Bridge, Marco corrected, the team that understood the vision and built something valuable. And what about you? Margot turned to Olivia, betrayal evident in her voice. After everything I've done to position you? Olivia met her mother's gaze. That's the problem, Mom. You've been positioning me my entire life. Harvard, this company, this project. You never asked what I wanted. And what exactly do you want? Margot asked coldly. To earn my own success, Olivia replied simply. To learn from people like Kaida, who build things that matter, not just grab credit. The conference room door opened again, and the company's CEO walked in, looking concerned. What's going on here? I've got 7 major investors texting me directly. Richard stood. Perfect timing. We were just discussing the future of Bridge, either as an independent entity led by its original creator, or not at all. The CEO looked from Richard to Margot to me, quickly assessing the situation. Perhaps we should continue this in my office, he suggested, his expression unreadable. For the next 4 hours, negotiations continued in the executive suite. Terms were proposed, rejected, and revised. Corporate attorneys were called, documents were drafted. By late afternoon, an agreement was reached. Bridge would become a separate company with initial funding of $7.2 million, significantly more than the original $5 million projection. The intellectual property would transfer to the new entity in exchange for a 12% ownership stake for our former employer. The original team, myself, Devin, Faye, and Zeke, would form the core leadership, with me as CEO. Olivia would join as Director of Client Relations, bringing her Harvard network but earning her position through actual contribution. As for Margot, she remained at the original company, her influence severely diminished. The board had questions about her management approach that would take months to answer. Her daughter's very public decision to join our new venture spoke volumes. 3 months later, Bridge launched its platform. The response exceeded even our most optimistic projections, with over 600 small businesses applying in the first week. Our algorithm identified promising ventures that traditional lenders had overlooked, providing capital to entrepreneurs who reminded me of my father. 6 months after launch, we became profitable, an almost unheard-of timeline for a fintech startup. 1 year in, we expanded internationally, bringing our platform to emerging markets where small business lending was even more constrained. I occasionally saw Margot at industry events. She avoided eye contact, steering clear of any conversation. I heard through connections that she had been moved to a different division with fewer responsibilities, not fired, but effectively sidelined. A career setback she might never fully recover from. Olivia flourished in her role, proving herself through genuine contribution rather than family connection. She and I developed an unexpected friendship built on mutual respect and a shared vision for Bridge's future. On the anniversary of our launch, I received an envelope with no return address. Inside was a handwritten note in unfamiliar handwriting. My restaurant failed because banks couldn't see past my accent and immigrant status. If Bridge had existed then, maybe my daughter wouldn't have had to drop out of college to support me. Thank you for building what was missing when I needed it. A small business owner who got a second chance. I never discovered who wrote it, but I framed that note and hung it in my office. It reminded me that the best revenge against people who try to diminish you isn't their downfall. It's your success on your own terms. My father never got to see Bridge succeed. He passed away 6 months before our launch, still carrying the shame of his failed restaurant. But I like to think he would understand that his struggle wasn't in vain. It became the foundation for something that now helps thousands of people like him. Margot took my project, but she couldn't take my vision or my determination. In trying to give her daughter an unearned advantage, she instead taught her the most valuable lesson. True success comes from building something meaningful, not from taking credit for others' work. The $7.2 million that launched Bridge has now grown into a company valued at over $100 million. More importantly, We've funded over 10,000 small businesses that traditional banks rejected, creating jobs, revitalizing communities, and giving entrepreneurs second chances. That's worth more than any revenge could ever be. If you've made it this far in my story, I want to thank you for listening. Life doesn't always give us perfect justice or Hollywood endings, but sometimes, if we stand firm in our value and refuse to be diminished, we create something better than what we lost. If this story resonated with you, please leave a comment about a time when you stood up for yourself or your work. Your experiences matter, and they might just inspire someone else facing a similar challenge. Remember, the best response to someone underestimating you isn't to prove them wrong, it's to prove yourself right.